All right, let's get started. Hi, and welcome back to City Cloud Masterclass, the webinar series where we will teach you the ins and outs of City Cloud OpenStack. Today I have Alexander Roos with me. Hi, Alex.
Hello?
Alexander is one of our cloud infrastructure specialists, and he's going to tutor this class. And today we're going to learn more about how to get started with cloud automation, right, Alex?
Yes, that's correct.
If you have any questions during Alexander's presentation, feel free to write them in the chat or write them in the questions section, and Alexander will do his best to answer all of your questions during this session. All the answers to all the questions will still be published on citycloud.com after the class. So you have a short presentation on cloud automation and also a short demo to show how this works in real life. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I'll give a short presentation on how you get started with cloud automation, what it is, and some of the tools. And I'll give a short demo.
Perfect. So let's get started.
Yeah. Okay, so getting started with cloud automation. So the first question you might ask yourself, what is automation and why do I need it? Well, you need to go back to the basics. What have we been doing so far? Well, the industry have been setting up monolithic servers over and over again, having teams of engineers setting up them on the fly. So what you want to do is instead go to a more streamlined approach. But that's not where we've been. So we've had guys setting up 20 some systems to solve problems with different solutions. And for documentation, yeah, all engineers are not that good at documentation. So you might end with 20 some systems with no documentation or sparsely no documentation. And then you will have people quit or they might work on some other projects. And then you need guys to either learn how this system works or they need to set up new systems. And then you will yet again have new infrastructures, new servers that will solve the same problem in 20 different ways. So how does automation solve this? Well, you can go back to the car industry. They have made the same journey. In the beginning, they assembled cars by hand. And then came the assembly line. So instead of assembling cars, the engineers went on to assemble blueprints instead. This saved time on deployment, and you can free up the engineers' times to develop new blueprints instead of working on the same solutions over and over. And then get consistency on each iteration. This is also important in IT as it is in the car industry. Because say if your system goes down, you don't want to spend maybe hours on debugging something that you can't find. So instead you can just use your blueprint and have a new infrastructure set up overnight. And documentation. That's also something that automation solves. So you have your blueprints, so you're already written your documentation. So then you ask yourself, how do you get there? Well, I would say start small. All tasks can be automated, and why not automate them? And you shouldn't be afraid to automate. Engineers or developers won't lose their jobs because they don't have any servers to pet. Because they'll be working on new exciting things instead of taking care of the old legacy servers. And I would say look at more than one tool. I'll show you a set of tools that does different things, and I would say tools in combination can be more powerful than one tool alone. And an old classic, don't reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of modules and a lot of finished playbooks in case of that you can reuse, and the community, there's a large community around automation. And I would say stick with what you know. If you have expertise on YAML and you have expertise on Python, use these to your advantages. There's a lot of system that incorporates these languages. And ask for help. There's other guys that have done this journey already and are willing to help you on this journey. Then we go over to what is an SDK. We're going to talk a lot about SDKs. So SDK is a software development kit. It's a set of tools and frameworks for you to interact with other products, basically. It's an interface made by developers for developers, you can say. Say if you have an infrastructure like ours, OpenStack, and you want to have other developers setting up servers and spinning up networks, but they don't know how it works. So you make something that they know. For example, Python. For example, YAML. So they can do it on their own terms. Like for example, we have made a simple SDK, which in this case is our control panel. So instead of clicking around in our control panel, you can use YAML or you can use something else to communicate. You can use the, for example, built-in client for OpenStack. And this is what enables automation. So let's go over to the first basic tools. We have deployment SDKs. The deployment SDKs, they focus on your infrastructure, setting up servers and checking that they are okay. For example, Heat, for example, that's made by the OpenStack community. And they work very close to OpenStack, and it does one thing, and it does it very well, setting up your infrastructure, setting up servers and whatnot. But say you want to do more than just infrastructure. You also want to deploy your Apache or your databases. Then you have configuration and deployment SDKs that take care of both your configuration, setting up your databases, setting up your load balancers, and setting up your Apache web servers and whatnot. But if you're not into configuration, you don't want to deal with that, you want to just have a finished product where you can focus on your code for your application. Then we have full automation. This company is providing you with finished playbooks and finished everything basically. You just point out, I want 3 web servers and I want 2 databases. They should be connected and I want a load balancer in front of this. And these guys will just take care of that and put it into the cloud. And these you can also choose if you want to have it in a public cloud or a private cloud or hybrid cloud. So really to summarize, with automation you got consistent environments, will be easier to maintain and roll out, freeing up much more time for your engineers to innovate rather than to maintain.
All right, thank you for that introduction, Alexander. Let's see if I'm not quite sure what. Anyways, I had a couple of questions on that before we continue with your demo. So these SDKs that you were talking about, the different ones, do they work on all clouds?
Yeah, they work on almost all clouds. Really have to see what they're integrated against. For example, Heat, it works very closely with OpenStack because it's developed by OpenStack. But you can use it for other cloud providers as well.
Okay. All right, so you had the demo to show us as well, and you're going to show us how this works in real life, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
So take us through that.
So yeah, I've chosen to use Heat Ansible in combination with Ansible Tower. So we're just going to go over to my terminal where I control my Heat templates from. So we're just going to kick a stack up here. So now it's really creating Heat. What Heat does is that it creates my infrastructure. So we can actually, and I have chosen in this case City Cloud as my infrastructure provider. So let's head over to City Cloud here and look at my stack being created. So what it does now, it is provisioning my server, and you can see here it has actually provisioned a floating IP right now. And we can go over, and here comes the server as well. So we can go over and list our servers. So now that the server is provisioned, it will tell my Ansible Tower to deploy, in this case, WordPress onto my site. So here in WordPress, we had just to log in into my Ansible Tower, and we can see the listed jobs here. As a Swedish chef, we are already deployed a playbook, so we can look at. So what it first does, it has an inventory sync, and then it runs the playbook. And in this case, playbooks, that's the word for Ansible, for yeah, a set of tools and a set of things for it to do to install your servers. So here you can see that it sets up databases and insert firewall rules and install engines in this case. And when it's done, and then in the end, you will have a completed WordPress for you to use. In its case, it wasn't finished yet, but yeah, in the end, what we'll have, I think it's this one. Yeah, we will end up. The finished project is a WordPress. And this is normally something that would take hours to set up. You need to, if you go back to before cloud, you would have to install a server. You would have to do network configuration. You would have to, basically install the software on the server, for in this case, CentOS. And then you need to install engines and your databases. And this was made just now in a couple of seconds.
Okay, just take us through that from the start. How is everything connected? So first off, you started off with a terminal. What did you do there?
Okay, the terminal calls, in this case, the Heat client. And Heat is a part of OpenStack. So it manages my infrastructure. So I tell, through Heat templates, I tell them I want a server in this and this size. And I want it to start with, in this case, CentOS. And after it's done, it should do a callback to my Ansible tower, which in that case, I have already created a job in the Ansible tower, and that job will be executed on this server.
Okay, and Ansible tower was this one then?
Yeah.
Okay. How are these two tools sort of connected to City Cloud then? How do they do their operations?
Yeah, then you have to use credentials. In, for example, City Cloud Control Panel, you can go into APIs and create API users. This is what you need to communicate with, in our case, OpenStack. So I have both entered my credentials in Heat and in Ansible Tower. What Ansible Tower needs it for is to create an inventory. The inventory is the set of hosts. In this case, the hosts consists of our CentOS machine. So when Ansible Tower sees that it gets a new host in its inventory, it will then execute the playbook that were written beforehand.
Okay. And Heat is going to be demoed in more in depth in the next webinar as well.
Yeah, that's correct.
I don't see any other questions at the moment, but I have a couple of more. So, talking about this example in particular, using WordPress, how far down can you actually automate? Could you install could you install themes and plugins and that kind of stuff as well?
Yeah, you could. Actually, everything that's called by an API, you can get into your configuration SDKs. So they can just call the specific API plugins to WordPress, for example. Or if you can't, you can always just upload it into the themes folder in this case, for example.
Okay. All right, so about these playbooks, those are pre-written scripts, automation scripts. Was that the correct? Yeah,
that's the correct answer. As we went through, you had configuration and deployment SDKs. Yeah. So in that category, you have to write your own playbooks or use the community's playbooks. But of course, you should always know what you're using beforehand. So you should always start with writing your own playbooks and then maybe using other people's playbooks so you know what's in them.
Understood. Okay, so let's start off with the questions. And thank you guys for staying. Sorry, so much, very sorry for the trouble. And we're going to stick around and answer the questions, right, Alex?
Yeah. I thought it was crystal clear, so I
don't yeah, I thought so too. And then,
wondering why it wasn't having a question.
Yeah, exactly. Then we were actually seeing the questions, and we're like, oh, shoot. All right, so let's just take them from the top, from the chat window first of all. So Johan was asking, why do you use Ansible? Is it better than Chef or Puppet?
I wouldn't say better. It's easier. It uses YAML, and it has an easy structure. Ansible is the three of them that's very easy to get going with. Maybe in the long run, Chef and Puppet have some better performance. You can type code into Puppet and Chef. So you can do a lot of more of iteration and maybe able to cleaner code. But you can do iterations in Ansible as well. But yeah, I will say YAML and that it's easy. That's why we use.
Okay, is that a personal
Ansible.
preference, so to speak?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions?
And of the three, supposedly Chef has the steepest learning curve.
Okay. All right. Here's another question from Anders. Could you show the terminal and heat example again?
Yeah, sure. So we're going to go over to my terminal here. You can see I have created a few stacks. So right now we've already created our stack. So if I created the same stack again, it would just say that I already created one. So we'll just create WordPress number 3. And right now it's creating my stack. And you can list your stack. We can go over and to the browser again, to City Cloud, to show you the stacks. So here's my stacks. The great thing about it is that these stacks contain my whole infrastructure. So if I delete one of my stacks here, it will delete both my server and my floating IP addresses and everything else connected to that stack.
Networks and everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can delete your whole infrastructure with a press of a button.
Okay. Just because we messed up everything, could you just go through the terminal window once more?
Yep, sure.
And so that we can really explain. Anders is also asking, what's the stack? Could you explain that?
Yeah, the stack is just a word for your infrastructure, you can say. The stack contains your servers, your IP addresses, your networks, your load balancers. The stack just keeps them up to date and say how the progress is with creating your stack and how far it's gone.
No. All right, let's see what other questions we have here. Julian is asking, where does Harriscorp's Terraform fit?
Okay, that's nothing I've really been delved into that much, so I would really need some more what you use it for and what concepts do you have it for. Maybe I could, if you can elaborate more on the question, maybe I could say where it fit in.
Yeah, if you're still there, Julian, please elaborate your question, and Alexander will try to answer that. Here's another question, also from Julian. Could you show a template or a playbook?
Right now, I don't have a template, or I can show my Heats template, but I don't have a completed playbook, as all those are uploaded into Git repositories. That's something that's very easy done by, for example, Ansible Tower. Ansible Tower pulls down your GitHub playbooks. For those that have used GitHub, GitHub is a kind of repository, you can say, for where you can save all your playbooks. So you can show you my. So we have to go over to the terminal first, and I'll just show you my. So here's the basics of the playbook. You have some variables that you can specify. As you can see in my, when I created my heat stack, I specified the server name and my tower private IP. And in this playbook, I used defaults, so I went to default CentOS 7, and I used 1 core 2 gigabyte server. And later you specify which server, which resources you should call. And you can see down here, this is where the Nova server gets called, and it creates your Nova server with an image properties and flavor properties. Flavor being the CPU and RAM, etc. And when it's spin up the server, this is the callback to my Ansible Tower to create my WordPress.
Okay.
And also you could elaborate this heat template to actually wait for a pingback from Ansible Tower to say, hey, I'm completed with my side of the configuration. So you can put the stack to complete.
All right. Hopefully that answers most questions. We'll stick around for a minute or so to see if you have any other questions on this, and otherwise, I think we're done for today. Oh yeah, here's a question from Anders. Are there examples like this YAML code online?
Yeah.
Could you show that? Is that
Yeah, I think we can find some YAML code that we can show online. Yeah, we go to the browser. So don't fail me now, Google. That looks something. So yeah, here we have in WordPress Nginx. And this is defined in hosts. You have your host template. In this case, you have specified a web server. And you have the main site. This is what calls which modules should be installed. So you have specified the common role, MySQL, Nginx, PHP, FPM, and WordPress. So what you try to do in Ansible is you try to divide your roles, just like in programming, that you try to divide your functions. So you have roles. All these roles can be reused. That's the nice part about it. So you can have a huge library of different roles created by different engineers. So say you want to create a load balanced WordPress with different databases and so forth. So you don't need to create all those roles. Maybe the engineering team from your network team has created a load balancer role, and your WordPress guys have created one of their WordPress roles. So you just combine these two roles, and you will have your load balancer that's made by your engineering role team from the network team, and the WordPress guys would combine their role from WordPress. So basically, any from management or anyone can just spin this up and deploy a WordPress with a load balancer with all the knowledge of their engineering team combined. So that's the nice thing about it. So we can go into this, and you have the tasks. This is mainly the main focus. So you can see this isn't very much. It installs Nginx. It uses the module Jum. It's a module in Ansible. And you have a copy. And he copies his templates. So this is the configuration for Nginx. And at the bottom here, he has done notify, which will restart the Nginx web server. So that's basically how roles are made. You try to keep them small to be able to reuse them. I think that's a good walkthrough.
all right?
Then there's a lot of reading you need to do how to build your playbooks, and there's ad hoc commands you can do with Ansible, so you don't need to do playbooks. You can just shoot in, I just want to ping my server, or I want to get the configuration of my server. You can do just one command and you can check if it's alive.
All right. Anders would like to see if could show an example that can be used straight into the cloud to actually do what you did, or similar at least, to be able to go straight at it.
Okay. Do we have something like that prepared?
Well, if you don't, we'll just wait with that. We can paste in
we
a couple of links. Yeah. Maybe the exact example that you used, if it's available for. Yeah.
Actually, I used an example by a guy from the Ansible team made. So we can show you a link to his blog, and you can recreate the whole steps that I have done in your own environment.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll add that when we publish the replay. So if there are no further questions, just like to apologize again for the stream problems that we had, and thank you all again for sticking around for the questions. We will cut it together so the replay will hopefully be all right with the actual presentation and the questions that Alexander has answered now. Perfect. Thank you very much for joining this masterclass. Thank you, Alexander.
Thank you.